bring up one more concept related to this particular program we were looking at, this class we were looking at. So one section that we did not cover in the past, and I've been trying to bring up over time, just keep running out of time to do it, is in section 6.11, and it brings up a concept of an overloaded method name. And all that means, or let me introduce it in the context of this problem. So we had created this method called increase total points, where we increase the total points scored by some particular number of points, so by 20 or whatever it may be. Well, we actually might want another version of this method that does something simple, like just increase the total points by 1. So we could actually, instead of saying increase the total points by 30, we could actually just say, I want to be able to also have a method available if we just want to increase the points one at a time, right? And call increase total points in a loop or something like that to increase one by one by one by one. Okay, so I could do this. I could actually create another version of this method called increase total points that doesn't have a parameter. It just increases the total points by 1. In other words, increment or total points equals total points plus 1 or total points plus plus. So you may be looking at this and saying, well, wait a second, we now have two methods with the same name. Okay, we can't do that, right? We can't have two variables with the same name. We can't have two methods with the same name, right? How is the program going to know which one we're calling? That wouldn't make any sense. And if you thought that, that's a good thought. But you can actually have multiple methods with the same name as long as, which is called overloading the method name, as long as they don't have the same parameters. So as you can see here, this method has one integer parameter. This method has no parameters. As long as those are different, the Java compiler can tell the difference between the two of them when you call them by whether or not you pass in an integer or not. So in our other program over here, when I say increase total points 25, I'm passing in an integer. It clearly looks at, oops, go back to the player. It looks at these two methods and it says, oh, it's clearly this one you're calling because you're passing in an actual value. As opposed to if I came back here and I just called increase total points, which means I want to increase the total points by 1. Again, I'm not passing in any arguments. I'm not passing in a number. So the program can clearly look over here and say, well, obviously you're calling this version of increased total points. So this is this little, just simple concept called overloaded method names. And as long as we have different numbers or different types of parameters in two methods with the same name, we can go ahead and do that. And in some cases, it's nice because we can do something like this where we can basically make two versions of the same thing available just to behave slightly differently. So an object could use either one of these. Okay, so that's something I wanted to introduce that now, partly because I keep meaning to bring that up. And the other thing is we're going to go into a section here in a minute where we talk about these things called constructors that you've already started learning about. And we're going to have constructors that actually have the same name and do slightly different things.